Imagine waking up one morning and realizing your entire way of life runs on a fuel that's quietly dying. Not gone yet, not empty, just declining, getting harder to get, more expensive to maintain, wrapped in politics and conflict, still working, but clearly past its peak. That's not a sci-fi premise. That's exactly what happened to coal Britain. That's what's starting to happen to oil America. And that's the same pattern that's going to shape whatever comes next. Because here's the harsh reality nobody really wants to sit with. Empires aren't built on vibes, democracy, or slogans. They're built on energy. Cheap, concentrated, controllable energy. Coal, oil, gas, whatever runs the machines, feeds the factories, moves the ships, powers the data centers, warms the homes, and flies the drones. That's the real foundation. And every time the foundation changes, the empire sitting on top of it changes too. That's the energy collapse pattern. An empire locks itself into one dominant energy source. It rides that source to incredible wealth and power. Then the cost of that energy, not just in money, but in effort, politics, and blood, starts to rise. The empire ignores the warning signs, doubles down, militarizes the supply, financializes the system, and assumes it can manage the decline. It can't. Eventually, a new energy regime shows up, new technology, new infrastructure, new players. And the old energy empire doesn't adapt fast enough because its entire identity, economy, and military are built around the old fuel. Coal Britain, oil America, and whatever energy system is about to replace them. So let's walk through this pattern. Not as some save the planet speech, not as yay technology cheerleading, but as a cold look at power. Because if you understand how coal Britain rose and fell, and how oil America rose and is cracking, you can see where we're heading next. Let's start with coal Britain. Before coal, the world ran on muscle and wood. Human muscle, animal muscle, trees, wind and water in small doses. That was the energy budget for most of human history. You could build empires, but they were slow, limited, fragile. Armies marched on foot. Ships depended on wind. Production was constrained by how many bodies you could control. Coal broke that ceiling. Suddenly, Britain had this dense black rock that could be burned to drive steam engines to pump mines, power factories, drive trains, push ships regardless of wind. Coal was concentrated power you could store, control, and scale. The timing and location weren't random. Britain had coal reserves in the right places, access to iron and shipbuilding, a culture of tinkering, engineering, and financial risk-taking, and a navy that could protect shipping lanes for coal, goods, and trade. So coal Britain becomes the first industrial empire. Textiles, steel, locomotives, steamships. They build railways across continents, ships across oceans, factories that make older economies look like handicraft workshops. Coal becomes the backbone of everything. Coal for the factories, coal for the railroads, coal for the navy, coal for heating homes in those smoggy cities. This is the early stage of the pattern, energy unlocked. You get explosive growth, rising productivity, and ridiculous geopolitical leverage. Britain can move faster, produce more, and project power farther than almost anyone else because their energy is cheap and controllable for a while. Then the trap starts to form. Because once your factories, your fleet, your cities, and your workers are all built around one energy source, you're locked in. Your entire economy becomes a coal machine. And here's the thing about every cheap energy story. It never stays cheap forever. Coal mines get deeper, the easy seams get worked out. You need more infrastructure to get the same energy. Other countries start copying your tech. You suddenly have competition, German coal, American coal, other industrial regions. The air gets choked. Coal cities get filthy and unhealthy. There's social pressure, there's labor conflict, there's political unrest. And then, in the background, something new appears. Oil, liquid fossil sunlight. More energy per unit than coal, easier to transport, better for engines. Oil doesn't immediately kill coal. That's not how transitions work. But it starts carving out the most profitable strategic areas. Transportation, cars, planes, fast ships, mechanized armies. The British Empire is still running on coal psychologically, even when it's dabbling in oil. The entire establishment, financiers, politicians, industrialists, grew up on coal. Their sunk costs are in coal. Their infrastructure is coal-heavy. Their mental model of power is coal-based. So when the world shifts toward oil, who takes the lead? The place with massive oil reserves, sprawling land, a car culture, and the ability to turn internal combustion into a religion. America. Coal. Britain enters the later phase of the pattern. Its energy edge fades. Its industry faces competition. Its currency loses dominance. Its empire cracks under the strain of war, debt, and changing technology. It's not just the empire got tired. It's that the energy regime that made it unstoppable stopped being the top dog. Enter Oil America. This is the second round of the same pattern. Where Britain's symbol was a coal-fired locomotive and a steamship, America's symbol is the car on the highway and the jet in the sky. The U.S. starts with enormous domestic oil production. It builds pipelines, refineries, freeways, suburbs. It builds an entire culture on top of cheap gasoline. Drive to work, drive to the mall, drive to your house in the suburbs. Trucks bring food from thousands of miles away. Planes connect the world overnight. And underneath all that, oil. Oil in the cars, oil in the plastics, oil in the fertilizer that feeds industrial agriculture. Oil in the logistics that move everything around. Then the US does something coal Britain never really did at scale. It militarizes energy supply globally. The US dollar and global oil trade get tied together. The US Navy protects shipping lanes, choke points, and key regions. Deals get made with oil-producing states. Coups, wars, sanctions, alliances. A lot of them have one common denominator: who controls the tap? Oil. America isn't just a country using oil. It's a country that turned oil into the backbone of its global financial and military system. This is the empire in its energy dominance phase. Domestic production plus control over foreign reserves plus a currency linked to oil trade equals leverage over much of the planet. But you already know what's coming. The same trap appears. Once your economy, your jobs, your cities, your diets, your military, your trade flows, your everything is wired to oil. You're locked in. You're not going to just transition overnight because someone made a nice climate documentary or invented a new battery in a lab. The whole machine is geared for oil. And as the pattern goes, the cheap, easy oil gets used first. Over time, you're drilling deeper, going offshore, going to politically unstable regions, needing more tech, more capital, more risk, more geopolitics just to keep the same flow. On top of that, the rest of the world isn't static. Other nations industrialize. They need oil too. They build their own alliances, pipelines, fleets. They don't want to be permanently dependent on one empire controlling the choke points. Meanwhile, back home in Oil America, the population gets used to a certain lifestyle. Cheap flights, big cars, giant houses far from city centers, industries that rely on just-in-time global shipping. Try taking that away quickly and watch what happens socially and politically. So, like coal Britain, Oil America hits this point where the cost of keeping the energy system going rises, the geopolitical risks around that energy rise, the environmental and social blowback rises, the financial system leans on debt and complex instruments to smooth over all the cracks. And you get this weird moment we're in now where oil is still absolutely central to everything. Everyone knows we have to transition. Nobody has a smooth path to actually do it without breaking something. That's the energy collapse pattern in its late stage, too entangled to keep going cleanly, but too fragile to change quickly. So what comes next? This is where the coming energy regime change part kicks in. History says this: when an empire's dominant energy source hits its limits, the world doesn't go dark. We don't all just sit in caves and cry because the coal seams are harder to reach or because oil is politicized. What happens is, a new energy regime rises alongside the old one, feeds on its weaknesses, then slowly takes over the most profitable, strategic segments. Until one day, it's the default. That's what oil did to coal. That's what coal did to wood and muscle. And that's what the next system is going to do to oil. But here's the twist. This time, the new regime probably won't be a single fuel like just wind or just solar or just nuclear. It's more likely to be a hybrid system. Electrification of everything it can. Renewables for a big chunk of power, nuclear where countries are willing to accept it, batteries and storage tech smoothing out volatility, smart grids and digital control systems orchestrating the flow of energy like data on the internet, and of course, Fossil fuels still hanging around for longer than ideal because inertia is real. The foundations of this system are already visible. Solar panels, wind farms, grid-scale batteries, electric vehicles, data centers, smart meters, AI optimizing loads, all that stuff. But right now, it's messy. It's expensive in some ways, cheap in others. It challenges existing interests. It doesn't map neatly onto the geopolitical landscape built around oil. And that's why the transition is not going to feel like a smooth, confident upgrade. It's going to feel chaotic. Energy transitions always do, at least from the inside. For Coal Britain, the transition to oil-powered navies and economies wasn't just about new engines. It was about new coalitions, new companies, new trade routes, new winners and losers. For Oil America, the transition to a digital, electrified, multi-source energy regime isn't just about swapping gas cars for EVs. It's about whole industries being rewritten, whole regions losing their economic anchor, new resource frontiers like lithium, cobalt, rare earths creating new dependencies, new forms of control, data, software, grids becoming as important as barrels and pipelines. And whenever you have that much shifting at once, you get instability. Fights over who pays for the transition. Fights over who loses jobs and who gains them. Fights over who controls the new infrastructure. Fights over which countries get to be the energy empire this time. You're already seeing early signs. Countries racing for battery supply chains, tensions over rare earth minerals, arguments over nuclear versus renewables versus gas bridges, conflicts over pipelines, sea routes, climate deals, carbon tariffs. Same pattern, different fuel. The current energy empire, built around oil and the dollar, is trying to stretch itself, talking about all of the above strategies, integrating renewables into grids built and regulated for fossil fuels, adding patches, subsidies, mandates. Does that sound familiar? It should, because it's the empire equivalent of what we talked about in the debt video, trying to keep an aging system alive with increasingly complex hacks. The danger isn't that we run out of energy. The danger is that the transition is mismanaged, hijacked, or weaponized in ways that break things faster than they're rebuilt. Think about how much of daily life depends on stable, predictable energy. Hospitals, food supply, transport, internet, water treatment, heating and cooling. You don't get to casually experiment with that and just see what happens. If the new energy regime isn't built with resilience and redundancy, the cracks show up as blackouts, shortages, price spikes, social unrest. On the flip side, the new energy regime, if done even halfway decently, breaks some of the old patterns. If energy can be produced more locally, with rooftop solar, local storage, microgrids that chips away at centralized empires built around controlling distant oil fields and sea lanes. If electric vehicles are combined with smart grids, they're not just cars. They're mobile batteries, part of an energy web. If industrial processes can run more flexibly, adjusting to renewable output, factories start to look more like digital systems than like rigid, always-on coal plants. That's a different world, less about who controls the tap in the Middle East, and more about who controls the technology, the manufacturing, the software, the materials for this new infrastructure. And you can already see which players are positioning themselves for that. So where does this leave you? Because it's easy to listen to all this and think, cool history lecture, scary future, not sure what to do with it. But this isn't a random topic. This is the base layer of your life. The job you have, the city you live in, the price of your food, the shape of your daily routine. They're all downstream of energy. Coal Britain shaped people's lives whether they understood coal or not. Oil America shaped people's lives whether they understood oil futures or not. The coming energy regime will shape your life, whether or not you ever read a word about grids, EROEI, or whatever buzzword. So here's the real value of seeing the pattern. You stop being surprised. You stop seeing every energy crisis, every gas price spike, every blackout, every climate policy, every geopolitical energy fight as some isolated random event. You start seeing them as symptoms of a larger transition, the existing energy empire hitting its limits and the new regime fighting to be born. Coal Britain, at its peak, probably felt eternal to people living in it. Oil America at its peak feels eternal to a lot of people right now. But underneath that feeling is the same slow drift, from unlocked energy advantage, to structural dependency, to rising costs and conflicts, to crisis, to regime change. The energy collapse pattern doesn't mean the lights go out and we all freeze. It means the empire built on the old energy loses its lock on the system, and some other configuration, new tech, new alliances, new centers of power takes over. So the next time you hear about a new pipeline getting blown up, a wave of blackouts, massive subsidies for renewables, fights over electric vehicles, battles for mineral resources in some region you never thought about, disputes over gas exports, sanctions, or shipping lanes, don't just hear news. Hear this. The coal empire had its time. The oil empire is in its late middle age, and the next energy regime is already crawling, stumbling, fighting its way into existence. Coal Britain didn't plan its decline. Oil America isn't planning to give up dominance. Empires never do. They fight, deny, delay, and improvise. But the physics doesn't lie. Energy density, cost, accessibility, efficiency, external damage, those things decide whether a system is stable or not. You live at the hinge point between energy regimes, and if history is any guide, that hinge point is going to feel like chaos from the inside. The question is not, will the energy system change? It's how violently so, and who ends up holding real power when the dust settles. Whatever the answer is, it won't be decided by speeches or hashtags. It'll be decided, once again, by whoever masters the new energy reality faster than everyone else.